Hello and welcome to another edition of the podcast You Should Have Been Here Last Week, in which myself, Steve Gribbin, and fellow comedian Paul Ricketts interview the movers and shakers, the club owners, the promoters, the bookers, the actual recipients of the request, who books this. We interview them and ask them what makes them tick. Indeed, what makes them TikTok. Now, this week, we've got one of the longest-standing comedy promoters in the biz.
Should have sat down by now, you reckon? But
yes, yeah, the wonderful promoter behind Cosmic Comedy Club, and indeed comedy at Town and Country Club 2, which ran for many years in the late 90s and early noughties. The one and only brilliant Josh Jones.
Today, our guest is Josh Jones, promoter, booker, management, Cosmic Comedy. So it's 1987, apparently, when you started.
I had to text somebody and ask them when I first got involved in comedy because I couldn't remember. It was 1984.
Wow.
That I lived next door to Jeremy Hardy and Dave Cohen. So because of Jeremy and Dave, we started going to comedy.
Ah, right.
And then what happened was that we moved out of the squats and I moved in with a friend in Golders Green. And he had a friend who had just taken over running a venue in North London called the Town and Country Club, which is still up and running as the Forum.
Yeah, it is.
When Ollie took it over, it was the Town and Country Club. And there was this fantastic which I think is still there, the mezzanine bar, which is like above the foyer. When you go into the front of the venue, there was a mezzanine bar. And Dave Cohen said, "This is brilliant. You should do comedy in this room." So my boss very kindly thought that was okay, and he let us do comedy. So we started our little comedy club, and I think that was about 1987, but my memory is so dreadful that I'm not 100% sure. I think it was 87.
What was the reason you got into comedy promoting? Was there any grand scheme behind it, or?
So the reason that we started doing comedy was purely and simply because I had a brilliant contact in comedy, Dave Cohen, and Dave helped me with the bookings initially, and because everyone said, comedy is the new rock and roll, and we had this rock and roll venue, so it just fit that if we had a room doing nothing, we should do something brilliant with it.
It does fit because one of the most famous stories about that particular venue is that one night when he hadn't had a particularly good gig, didn't Rob Newman kick the toilet off the wall? He lost his temper and kicked the toilet off the wall. It started gushing out with water and everything. Rock and roll.
He might have done. I do remember Rob, and it was either before he went on and he was a bit anxious about it, or it was after he went on, it didn't go very well. And he was sort of having a bit of a meltdown, and all the crew who were sort of they weren't hard, but they were the crew from the main venue. And they were all just sort of sitting around having a post sort of gig beer, and Rob Newman was having a bit of a meltdown in front of them, and they were all just looking at him with this like the grip. But it was brilliant, that club, and it did run for quite a few. Well, it ran until we moved over to Highbury Corner, but it was just such fun, really, because it was always busy because everyone would come to us and then they'd pile all down and have a dance at Wendy's. And so it was really good fun.
And when did you move to the Cosmic then? The Cosmic Comedy Club, was that the one?
So the Cosmic was much later. So from the Town and Country Club, we then took over that one at Highbury Corner, which is now called the Garage. So that became then a full-time comedy club, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And that was 1989, and we were there until we took over the Cosmic, we opened the Cosmic in 94. I don't know if you remember, but it was a big deal when we lost, because we lost the Town and Country Club and we lost the TNC2 at Highbury Corner at the same time. because I'm not 100% sure of all the politics that went on behind it, but basically they gave our gigs to the Mean Fiddler and Vince Brown. So it
I
got
remember.
taken away from us. Yeah, so then we moved to the Cosmic in 94 and we were there until whatever that was, 2000 or so.
That was a long time, wasn't it? So, nearly 8 years, I think it was.
Yeah.
That still remains one of my favourite ever heckles I've ever had. I was doing something with the crowd and I was making them repeat it. And there was a tiny gap. I mean, it's quite a posh area. It's even posher now. But there was a tiny gap and some guy at the back just went, "That's quite enough of that." just in that way that posh people have got. It was so funny, and the whole thing just broke down. I broke down laughing. I couldn't continue. Just the way you said it. It was so well timed. It's a brilliant heckle. I love that. That was a great club, actually. Didn't it used to be a punk club? It was.
It was a Greyhound. You know, we used to have customers, and they'd come in, and they just sort of their jaws would hit the floor at how it looked with all those wonky pillars that the designers had put in, and sort of fake brickwork everywhere and velvet curtains. It was really poncy. And these kids used to go, "Oh God, this used to be a really good gig. What's happened to it?"
I mean, it's an apocryphal story. Someone told me that when the Sex Pistols play there, there used to be an overhead fan, and everyone was pogoing. This must have been about 76, and someone got their Mohican caught. The overhead. But luckily it was less than like 2 minutes walk to Charing Cross Hospital, wasn't it? So he got taken.
It was literally next door, wasn't it? Yeah,
and they cut the top of his head off. Oh my God. What do you wish you'd known before you started promoting? What are the key things that you think, oh God, I had no idea it was going to be like this?
I wish I'd known that it could be a proper career, and that you could really and that you could sort of, it always just felt a little bit insecure to me. It felt a little bit like it's all going to pop any minute now, and no one will ever come again. And in actual fact, that wasn't the case, was it? We all can know it's still going strong, and there are gazillions of comedy clubs. But at the time, it felt a bit like you couldn't rely on it.
Well, I think it's similar to rock and roll, that no one actually expected that to have any sort of longevity, that bands weren't supposed to last any length of time, let alone acts. When you think of comedians, no one thought that you could do it for X amount of years. Did you, when you started, think that you'd be doing this?
No. Yeah, when I was in my 80s. Yeah. I'm actually, in comedian years, I'm about 93. No, of course we didn't. We thought it was going to be, especially in the 80s, it was like, we didn't really think about it. We expected it to end any second, and it nearly did in the early 90s. But, have you got any tips, Joss, for people that want to become promoters? What tips would you give people?
No, do you know, I thought about that, and all the people that really are successful or have stuck at it, they've got this sort of natural enthusiasm. So you can say to someone, "Oh, what you've got to do is be enthusiastic and stick at it," but you're just like that anyway, aren't you? People just stick at it, and they're determined, and they try things out. And just really recently, I was talking to a really young man who has started doing Zoom comedy. This is how they start now. They start on Zoom. I said, that's possible. But anyway, he's sort of is in contact with a new young promoter. And I was just saying, that's absolutely brilliant that somebody who's only 18-year-old is having a go at setting up Zoom gigs and setting up gigs. And that sort of inbuilt enthusiasm, you can't advise someone to be like that. They're just like that, aren't they? They're just kind of giving it a go, and they're sticking at it.
Yeah. And do some of them get it battered out of them by experience, though?
Well, honestly, I mean, that's kind of why I stopped actually running my own clubs. It's just exhausting. It really was. It's all very well being a promoter that goes in and does someone else's gig, but when you run the bricks and mortar of a full-time comedy club, and you spend your days worrying about, whether the chef is stoned or there's a leak in the roof, or, there's beer flies everywhere, or, you're herring up and down the motorway because the after school club finishes at 6 or whatever. It's exhausting, actually. So I think it's much nicer just booking into someone else's gig and they do the hard work.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. So which is your favourite bit? I mean, in terms of promotion, booking? I love the fact that I still get to do Fringe. I've got this comedy club that I run at the Fringe every year, and that is my passion. I love it. It's just a joy from start to finish. And it's a real blast of comedy for me. I go and see absolutely loads of comedy for the month. I squeeze into 30 odd days or 28 days in Edinburgh, more comedy than the whole rest of the year.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. I love it. And I think going up to Fringe is the highlight of my year, without a doubt.
Joss, when you were promoting, did you know who your audience were? How would you characterize the audiences that came to see the shows that you put on? Did you have an image of,
Yeah, we know who the audience were. I mean, when we were at the Town and Country Club, it was, and at the TNC2 to an extent, it was a sort of a North London going out kind of crowd. They were really local. And when we moved across to the Cosmic on Fulham Palace Road, it was much harder. There just didn't seem to be that going out vibe. But it was really hard work in West London, and they just seemed, like You're Famous, that's enough of that sort of heckle. They were a bit posher. And
they were
not as kind of up for it as the North London crowds, I don't think.
And yet you stuck there for nearly 7 years, didn't you? So it was.
Yeah, they did come, but we did run. We had a lot of midweek shows that were hard work to get people into. And I don't know if you remember, but in the old days, we used to do Edinburgh previews, and when it was a new, new thing.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was hard work to get people to come. You'd have these amazing acts doing a preview show, and no one would come, and it would be like it's because they didn't think they were getting value for money because it wasn't 4 comics on the bill. Whereas now
that sounds absurd when you say it now, doesn't it? Because it'd be the other way around. People would rather go to an Edinburgh preview than
now it's completely flipped now, and people would rather go and see one comic at the local art centre or theatre, and they don't go to comedy clubs with a 4-act bill anymore. I mean, that's what I think.
I used to run a club, and I put on Edinburgh previews, and our regulars were saying, "Oh, what if I don't like him? He's on for a whole hour."
Well, yeah, there is that, because what people used to say, isn't it? There's 4 comics, there's a compare, there's 3 comics, and you're bound to like one.
Yeah.
No, it was so derogatory, wasn't it?
Well, I hated all 4 of them, actually. So how do you think, and because you've been doing it a long time, how would you say that the comedy scene has changed?
Well, it's that, isn't it? But it seems to me that host and 3 format is completely gone. I mean, I've got theories about why that is, but so I'm going to see a show in a week or two at Maidenhead Northern.
Oh, that's a great. Is that your local art centre?
That's my local one.
It's fantastic.
Really great little theatre. It's really great, and I love going to shows there. And I'm going to see some girlfriends of mine have arranged to go to see an act. Ishan Akbar, who I've seen a few times. I really like him, but they said to me, "Oh, we've got no idea who he is, but let's go." So they're kind of up for going to see a solo show at the Arts Theatre. These ladies of my age, they wouldn't in a million years go to a pub comedy club without having, it just seems to me that it's flipped, and people will go to an art centre without having any idea of what they're going to see because, it's on a Saturday night, it's comedy and they fancy it. I might be wrong, but that's how it seems to me that it's.
I don't know. I want to hear more from you, Josh, about what you think the problem is with the free comics and MC.
I don't really want to sort of cause any ructions, but it seemed like there was these lineups that got sort of put into universities that they were a big agency that perhaps would have a deal with all the universities, and they'd put a load of, they'd put their touring shows in, and they weren't normally. I can see by your face that you know what I'm talking about.
We can't say for legal reasons.
But it seems to me that it took quite a few years, but it went from being a really flourishing thing to everyone just going, oh, well, that was a bit rubbish, I'm not going to bother with that again. And when that happens repeatedly over a few years, there seems like there's a whole generation of young people that went away from comedy. So my generation's still up for it. Perhaps the younger ones coming through are, but it does feel like there was a big generation where they just couldn't be bothered with having a not very good night out, and they just lost the love of it.
I mean, that leads us on to the other question. I mean, what do you see as the future of, it's a big question, the future of live comedy or comedy in general? How do you think it's going to pan out?
I think it'll be fine. I think it's established now. It's this thing where if you're an act now, you can tour and do solo shows, even if you've not got this sort of massive TV exposure behind you. And the theatres are up for booking you, which I think is really great for people. What do I think is the future? I think it's this. I think that's it now. I think it's rock solid and established.
I mean, do you think more? I mean, you talked about the younger comedians going and using social media. Do you think that's an ongoing trend that will only get more prevalent?
I guess I'm a little. I don't really use social media particularly. So I'm very impressed by it. I'm very impressed by people that have got, got millions of TikTok followers, and they're selling out massive venues. And I'm going, I've never heard of them. And that's because I don't do TikTok. No. So that's brilliant, isn't it?
Well, that's a different medium, I suppose.
It's a different medium, and it's always that thing as well, is that, like you go and see a comedy show at the O2 or whatever, or, I mean, even Hammersmith Apollo a little bit. You're so far from the stage, and it is worth it because there is still that amazing shared experience, that laughter, that you get when you're laughing your heart out, and you catch the eye of a complete stranger who's really, really laughing as well, and it's brilliant. That's what's brilliant about it. It's like having a dance, So I think that will stay.
Do you have a favourite sort of comedy, or are you quite broad in your taste?
I like all sorts of stand-up comedy, and I definitely don't limit myself to only seeing a particular style. What I like is the surprise of going to a gig and something really, really funny happens, and you think, oh, well, I didn't see that coming, and it was hilarious.
I want to ask a question. I've got a question down here that I forgot to ask you for. I mean, we were talking about, your favourite nights. What have been your favourite nights of comedy? And also, have you had any ones where you've sort of gone, oh my God, and everything's gone wrong? So there's two questions in one there, really.
When you've got a massive room full of people laughing, you just think, oh, I can't believe that's so amazing that we managed to put this show on that's been brilliant. And obviously in the early days, when some really good friends of, like Sean Hughes, when Sean won the Perrier, we already had booked for him to bring that show to do it with us at the TNC2 at Highbury Corner. And when he won the Perrier, we were sort of fully expecting him to say, sorry, Joss, I've got to, not going to let me. But he didn't. He held it in with us. And that was absolutely fabulous as well. And some of the shows that we had in the early days, like Rob and Dave did the Mary Whitehouse Experience with us, and we had, Mark Lamar did a lot of shows with us. And so, we didn't know that they were going to go on to be household names, but we really were very loyal to them, and they were loyal to us, and we loved that to bits. I'm trying to think if any of them were a total disaster. I mean, Christmas shows maybe.
Yeah. I remember a few hairy nights at the Cosmic when they did get a bit out of control.
Well, the Christmas shows.
Yes, yeah, and just very, very drunk, and you couldn't tell them anything, could you?
There was a rule with the Christmas shows: people book it for the comedy. What they really want is the disco, and what they complain about is the food.
And there's always one on every table who just sat there as well going, what have we come here for? I don't like comedy.
We went to the curry house last year. What's wrong with the curry house?
I won't go paintballing. Oh, God. Ironically, I wish they would.
As you're still booking, and there might be a few comics watching this, what's a good way of approaching you for bookings?
Just email me, joss@cosmiccomedy.co.uk. I don't book a huge number of shows now through the year, but come Fringe, I not only make a massive effort to go and see comedians I don't know, I'm also really happy to book people into the showcase show that I run on Trust. I'm not going to book a complete new act into the showcase show because it's very well established and it's quite a big room. But last year I booked a handful of comics that I didn't know at all because I trusted their agents and I trusted them that they were good, and they were absolutely excellent, you know. And I did then go on to book them in, you know, to my other gigs as well, having off the back of seeing them for 10 minutes, or go and see their solo shows. I love that, go and see, you know, a full show by somebody. So yeah, I'm definitely happy to, you know, for people to contact me.
Are you one of the promoters who likes to see film stuff as well, though? I mean,
I don't insist on it. You know, I do. You know, if you know, if an agent or another club says to me, you know, these people are great, you should book them, then I'm more than happy to trust people. I think, well, I can't necessarily get round to see everyone. I trust. You know, if you're doing headliners, or if you're doing the Store, or if you're doing, you know, the Bearcat or the Frog and Butty, I trust that those bookers aren't fools. They're not gonna book a dud act. So, you know, I'm really happy to trust and put people in. But as I said,
you don't know how unusual that sentence is.
Yeah, I know. We've talked to a few other promoters. It's quite funny because one of the interesting things about doing this is the total variety of responses to what we ask. I won't say which promoter was, but that question we asked you about any tips, one person went into the complete minutiae of putting a night on from the practical point of view. But you talked about it more in terms of drive and emotion and, you know, your joy at promoting, which is, it's just, well, everyone's different, aren't they? They've all got their own style. And
I do get new acts say to me, I do get people say to me, how do I get started? How do I get started? And I always just say to them, just go to comedy and, you know, just go. And it's the same if you want to be a promoter, just go to gigs and talk to the people and talk to the promoters and talk to the acts. And it's common sense, really. You know, it's common sense that you don't put all the tables in a big pile next to the fire exit.
Well, we've only got 1 minute left, so I think we're going to, unless we've got one more last question. What's your favourite comedian that you've ever seen?
Oh, Steve, you can't ask me that. Because I'll go to a gig next week and I'll say, oh, it was brilliant. I love that. I've got millions of favourite comedians.
Yeah. Well, we all have. Yeah.
I like them all, really. I'm in awe of them all, I think.
Oh, so here's the question then. So did you ever give it a go?
No. Absolutely not. I used to get stage fright doing the sound mic test. No. I'm not a big performer. No. I'm an organizer. I like to organize things.
Yeah, well, that's the exact opposite of many comedians, isn't it?
I know. That's why we need people like Josh.
We like to disorganize things.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to thank you for being on the podcast. It's been wonderful.
It was great. Yeah, that was great.
Thank you very. Yeah, it was great. It was great to have a chat. Yeah, really nice.
Yeah.
So that was Josh Jones. Interesting what she was saying about why she thinks that club comedy is being usurped by art centres and theatres, which is her viewpoint.
Just depends who you interview. We've got very different reactions from people like Stephen Grant and Kevin Precious, but they're talking about the fact that the live comedy scene is actually still quite vibrant, and they think that it will never really go. And I think one of the things is because it's live and there's a real sense of danger about live comedy, that as in anything can happen. You know, and mainly, by the way, but the fact that there's always in any live comedy performances the knife edge of it could go well or it could go badly. And I think the performer and the audience are aware of that, aren't they?
Well, yes, which brings us on to our lexicon word this week. I think everyone knows this one. It is death. Dying on stage, on your hole,
Oh, yes.
on your jacksie, on your ass.
That thing that brings out that sense of horrible sweatiness and fear in any comedian, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
your mouth goes dry, you start sweating, your palms are sweaty.
Yeah. The small of your back starts sweating. Places that really shouldn't be sweating are sweating. Your mind is confused. You don't know what to do, where to look, what to say.
That's the other thing, by the way. There's so many types of comedy death, aren't there? Because once Simon Bly and I once did the Portsmouth Jongleurs, which is amongst the most hideous gigs in the comedy circuit. Sadly, not sadly defunct, gladly now defunct, never to appear anymore. Over the course of 4 nights, he and I were both had terrible, terrible gigs, and we died every sort of comedy death. 1, silence. 2, rowdiness, as in really heckling. And 3, that gradual thing where you're ignored and talking. You know, where sort of it starts off as a low murmur, and then so you're slowly drowning under a sea of rhubarb, you know, like
it's politely losing the room, isn't it? Where they're not, you don't even engage with them. They're not even annoyed by you. They're just tolerating you. They're going to the toilet. There's shout, they're like, well, what else do you want? What else do you want to drink? They're sorting out their orders politely.
You're like a fly in the corner of the room, aren't you? What's that?
Yeah, it's ambient death.
What's that noise? You know, at the old Comedy Store in Leicester Square, because it was in an L shape, the bar was round the other corner. And when comedians started to struggle, that's how you knew you were going badly, because their faces of other comedians would appear like meerkats round the corner, pint in hand, just staring at you like sharks drawn to the blood in the water. And it happened to me once that I was in a skit video. I thought, this is going quite well. And then I saw the first face appear, and then a second one, and then a third one, and I thought, oh shit, we're actually dying. And it was like that down to the depths. And it's like that thing that's I mean, we can't help it. We're strangely drawn to the spectacle of dying, but then of course when you come off stage it's a different thing, isn't it?
Yeah, you watch the car crash as you're driving past, but if that person who's just died on stage comes up to you after the gig and wants to have a chat with you, you just go away, leave me alone. I don't want to touch you. Don't talk to me. Don't spread that contagion. If you have died, do not go up to any actor who's about to go on and say, can you give me some advice about why I died? Can you just give me some feedback? No, leave me alone. I'm about to go on stage.
Yeah, you're looking for a bit of fellow feeling and solace. No, you're not going to get it. I remember once terribly at the Bearwood Tavern in Bearwood in Birmingham when Frank Skinner was the compere, a terrible, terrible death coming off stage. And he actually hid from me. He didn't want to talk to me or have anything to do with me. He just disappeared out the room. And I said, where's Frank? Oh, he's gone out for some fresh air. And he only came back when it was time for him to go on, and he didn't have to have anything to do with me. And as he was walking past, he just kept his eyes straight ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I have a bit of a similar policy that if I see someone dying on stage, I'll go and have a look. But then after a certain point, I will leave the venue. I don't want to think, well, wait a minute, this is an unplayable room. Gosh, they're really rowdy. And I don't want that. I'm just going to see, well, okay, she or he has died, but don't blame the audience. Just go away for a bit, come back, pretend it's a completely different gig, and go out there and have a really good time. And most of the time, 99% of the time, that works.
Comedians' egos are such that, if it's a rough night, you'll be standing in the wings sometimes thinking, that's all right, they've died, but once I get on, I'm going to sort this out. I'll be okay. And then within about 30 seconds of being on, it suddenly dawns on you, oh, shit, I'm going to die as well. It's just that unbreakable confidence there. You're lying in the trenches waiting to go over the top. It's too quiet out there. And then when you get there, it's horrible. Yeah.
When you go on first, it's the toughest spot in comedy. Sometimes the person that goes on first dies, and then the person who goes on in the middle dies because it's a rough house gig and it's all those. But then a fantastic, well-known, well-loved comic is going on last. Well, sometimes you have to go and drive back home, and then you find an excuse to get in contact with that comic and go, well, how did it go for you? When you think it's unplayable, you want to find out if the great act at the end can play it. And sometimes I've even said to the great act at the end, we're staying just to see if you're going to die. And they've accepted that. And they said, well, okay. And they've died. And they can see us looking happy. Yeah, I told you it was unplayable.
Oh, God. You know, I think I might have told you that story before about me when I did this gig once at the Comedy Viaduct in Hanwell. It's run by the Burkhat, and I had a fantastic gig, absolutely, brilliant gig. And two people in the audience were really gushing afterwards. Said, "Oh, let me buy you a drink. You're great. You're brilliant. Have you got any other gigs coming up?" And I sort of laughingly said, "Well, as a matter of fact, I've got to rush off to another gig in Chiswick in a wine bar. You can come with me if you want." They went, "Oh yeah. Oh God, we think you're great." So we shared a black cab together. Got to the gig in Chiswick. He died on my hole. Completely died. And when I came off stage, they both fucked off. There was no sign of them at all. They'd gone from, "Oh God, we think you're so brilliant," to, and then they must have just sat there and gone, "Oh God, he's shit, isn't he?" Yeah, let's not stay to talk to him.
No, we've made a mistake. He's crap.
We've made a terrible error. With the audiences, it's like that. They just see you having a hard time. They think, that's it. You are shit. Yeah. End of story.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough. That's the bargain that you strike when you pay for a ticket, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah. You're only as good as your last gig. So yes, Death on Stage, and now the dying embers of this podcast. We're part of Podomy now, aren't we? Podomy.
Yes.
So Podomy. We're part of a new group of comedy podcasts, which we recommend that you check out the other offerings that Podomy have. And once again, if you've enjoyed this, tell your friends. For those people watching the YouTube, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, comment. What else do you do on YouTube?
Watch it a million times.
Yeah, download illegally. Yeah.
Over and over again. Yeah.
Yeah, do it on different laptops so we get multi-hits. When you're at work in the computer room, just log on every single computer. That's what we've been doing, and it's still not working for us.
No, that's true.
Help us out on that. So anyway, until the next time, we'll say goodbye and see you later on.
Bye.
They said you should have been here last week. I swear you should have been here last week.